What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to a very special episode of the Star Wars Exchange. We've never really done one like this, so we're keen to get into it. We're going to be celebrating 40 years of Return of the Jedi. Crazy to think that the movie's been out for 40 years because Mike and I haven't even been out for 40 years yet. So it's going to be a very good time discussing this film. Of course, I'm here doing it with Mike. How are you this week, mate?
Hey, happy to be talking. It's Return of the Jedi week. I'm here to talk some
That's
Return
it.
of the Jedi. You're wearing green. I'm wearing a little bit of green right here. It's kind of, I don't think we
Definitely
coordinated that at
planned.
all. But yeah, but I'm happy to be talking about Return of the Jedi this week. I got the chance to see the film during its 40th anniversary release run in
Mm.
theaters like a month ago, and it was a surreal experience. Like I could say I've seen Return of the Jedi in theaters now, and it's I mean we'll get into it, but it's just quite the film, and I have such a my childhood is very much tied around this one film, so I just cannot wait to talk about it and all that. So yeah, as always, happy to be here. How about you? How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I didn't get the chance to see it in theaters like I would have liked to because no one would show it here in Australia, unfortunately. But no, very jealous. And yeah, Mike was telling me all about that experience, which sounded crazy. But no, I'm good. Keen to get stuck into this. But before we do, Mike, this podcast is a part of a multimedia collaboration with us
It
and our
is.
other content creating friends. Do you want to tell the audience about that?
Yeah, so I think this was in the pandemic. Me and a couple of my good friends from the Instagram realm, and now I got to meet them. So in IRL, but we were like kind of bored, and it was like the end of the year of 2020, and we just sat around and we were like on, like we're playing like I don't know, like Battlefront or something together, and we are kind of like, why don't we like kind of do like this collab post thing where we already have our group set. Why don't we just like collab on some posts, workshop some things for the 40th anniversary of The Empire Strikes Back? And it turned out to be a big success, and people absolutely followed along and loved it. And we just like brought that conversation of Empire up around, and that was great. And we decided to do the same thing again, but this time on its actual birthday of the film. So and the project is bigger than ever before. We got more people involved, like Ari here, and then we also got like we expanded onto different social media platforms, Twitter, obviously here to YouTube, Apple Podcasts. Like we just decided to grow it out, and we decided this time around to do a podcast. We're the podcasters of the group, to do a podcast centered around Return of the Jedi, and talk about some of the things we loved about the film, and some of the influences that have stuck to Star Wars today. So yeah, we got all the posts. Ari and I have done some posts already on Instagram, and now we're here talking about the film, which is great because I feel like Star Wars is like the fan base is always about like give me instant gratification. Like I want to see the new show, I want to see the new series, I want to see the new movie, but we never stop to think about what we just experienced, what it means to us and stuff. And I feel like it's what I used to do back in the day when I used to podcast with Edgar. We would sit around and yeah, we would talk about the news, what was coming out, but we would also just sit and just talk about our experiences with Star Wars of the past. So I'm glad we get to like have this moment to breathe and just and relax and just chill out and talk Return of the Jedi. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and yeah, you guys are all part of this collab this year round. So welcome aboard.
Exactly. Yeah, and a few things that Mike just mentioned. It will be coming out on the exact 40th birthday of the movie, which is very cool. But yeah, this podcast is going to be a celebration of the movie. As Mike said, the fandom can be very, give me everything now, but it is nice to just sit here and be able to celebrate a film that is widely loved by the whole world, pretty much. So, and that's what we're going to do today. And let's just start it off by talking about our first sort of experience with Return of the Jedi. For me, I can barely even remember mine, but we'll still get into it. Mike, talk to us about yours though.
Mine is very special because this was the first Star Wars film that I watched in full. I think I'd seen bits and pieces up to this point, but this was like my first like ever movie, and this comes off the heels of playing the Lego Skywalker saga with my brother that like got me into Star Wars, because I used to think it was like gross and weird. I remember just Luke cutting up a Wampa's arm, and I was like, that is gross. And then you saw the intestines of a tauntaun, and I'm like, okay, I'm done with this movie. And I like walked away when it was playing at a family party or something. And then the Lego game came out not too long after on the Wii and stuff, and my brother and I like played the hell out of it, and I loved it. I'm like, why are the clones who I was just fighting besides just turned against me? And then obviously the Return of the Jedi, that level was just amazing because you got the Emperor, you got the speeder bikes, you got the cool Sarlacc pit moment. So I don't know. It was just a very iconic film to me. Even though I hadn't watched the film yet, I just knew a lot of like kind of the iconography that is associated with that film. And when I finally got around to watching it, was like not even a year after playing that Lego game, because my brother had found a DVD for $2 at a garage sale of the film, and he brought it home that Sunday, and we watched it, and I was like, "What you find?" He's like, "I found one of the movies," and we thought we found like treasure. We thought we were Indiana Jones. We just found absolute treasure, and we did, because it forever changed and forged my Star Wars fandom and love. So we sat down on that Sunday, watched Return of the Jedi, and now every Sunday I'm just like, it feels like Return of the Jedi day. So it was just a very special movie and stuff, and it to this day, I just watch it and get very emotional with all the heavy themes of redemption and endurance and perseverance and acceptance and forgiveness. It's a very packed film, so can't wait to dive deep into it. But yeah, that's kind of like my experience with Return of the Jedi. How about you? What was your experience like? Did you watch it on Disney Plus?
No. First of all, it's funny you say that about Empire, because I remember being the exact same way as a kid. It was always my least favorite, but it was because I was too scared by Han Solo going into carbonite. Like, I was always so freaked out by it. I was like, no, I'm out. I don't like this movie. But
That's
anyway,
fair.
no, Return of the Jedi is one of the most powerful Star Wars movies, without a doubt. Like I said, I can't really remember my first experience with it, but I remember watching it. Like, I remember early experiences of it, watching it as a kid. I definitely had a few that I gravitated towards, and that was Revenge of the Sith, Return of the Jedi, when The Force Awakens came out, The Force Awakens. But then, yeah, and even like The Phantom Menace as well. Those were sort of the ones that I gravitated towards. Return of the Jedi was easily my favorite original trilogy movie as a kid. Potentially still is. It's sort of up in the air, but yeah, I've always just kind of enjoyed the warmth of the film, even though it's about taking down an evil dictatorship. It still just fills me with so much warmth, and I remember feeling that when I was first watching it and experiencing it, because it's such a good movie to watch as a kid as well, because you got the Ewoks, you've got the happy ending, all the cool lightsaber fights, and I think this movie probably has I mean, we'll get into this, but this movie probably has the best lightsaber battle of all. And as a kid, I didn't really understand why I thought it was the best one, but you realize how much substance there is to it, how much emotion is packed into that fight. And yeah, I just remember feeling all that, and ultimately I can't describe it any better than this movie made me feel warm when I first experienced it. So yeah, but let's talk about the fact that it's been out for 40 years now, because that's a long time. 1983, May 25th is when it came out in the US. So Mike, I think I know the answer to this question, but does the film still hold up?
Yeah, very much so. And I kind of felt a little bit detached from Star Wars and the movies itself after just, I don't know, like I just didn't feel attached. I felt more attached to the animated stuff for a bit. But because exactly what you were talking about, that warmth. With Star Wars, I've always been about the emotion. At first, what catches my eye is the lightsaber battles and cool space battles. It's like, okay, I'm a 9-year-old, 10-year-old boy, and I see these flashy things. I'm like, oh, great, you got my attention. But what makes me stay is the drama, the emotion, the characters, and Return of the Jedi was for me that like just really, like as you just said, warm, heavy film. And but I just felt out of tune with the movies in general. I'm just like, like right now I just feel disassociated from anything, so I'm just not very receptive to even doing a movie marathon of the movies. But when I just went to go see this in theaters, I was like, wow, I just want to go home and turn on my Blu-ray player and throw the disc right in there and just watch it on Blu-ray, and just enjoy it like I did when I was a kid. And it was just in the movies, I like literally, I like teared at like different parts. Like usually I'll tear up at like at the Luke Invader scene at the end, or you know, some of the more heavier moments at the end of the film, or just get just emotionally moved, not necessarily tears. But this time around, I found this time around with Luke and Yoda, which you know, we'll talk about later. But that scene of Yoda just passing on the torch and then passing away, I was like, man, how many times has that happened in real life for me? So I just like, I literally cried, and I was like, damn, I don't think I've cried this early in a film before. And I was just there crying at that scene, and how beautiful it was. But yeah, it very much still holds up. There's just so much of this that still is very relevant to the conversations of Star Wars today. So and it's
Yeah.
always a pleasure to go back and watch all the Muppet and puppet action at the beginning of the film. It's just, it's
Yeah.
great. So yeah, love that movie.
No, absolutely. And I think, you know, talking about does it hold up, like visually, I think it does. But even if it doesn't, the narrative and the substance that the story has to offer is so rich that this film is always going to hold up, even if technology, you know, makes films look just I don't know, out of this world, completely incredible, and Return of the Jedi looks like dog crap compared to it. It's always going to hold up because there's just so much to be said by the movie, and that's what's super important, and that's what can be lacking in some recent media, specifically in Star Wars. But Return of the Jedi just has so much to say, and that's what's going to make it always hold up, and that's what makes it such a fantastic film, and one of the best in the Skywalker saga, or just in Star Wars, in my opinion. But speaking of that, Mike, where does Return of the Jedi sort of fall for you on that ranking spectrum, I suppose, of Star Wars films?
Yeah, I before my little theater experience, I definitely had. I've always like the way I flip Rebels and Clone Wars. Like if I'm watching Clone Wars, I'm like, oh yeah, this is my favorite. Rebels,
Yeah.
you're second. And then when I'm watching Rebels, I'm like, Clone Wars, baby, you're second. I love Rebels, and I feel like it's the same with Empire and Return of the Jedi. Like it's just, uh, I like right now, if I'm going through like a dark period in time, I think Empire will be my favorite. But if I'm going towards, you know, a bit of right now, you know, carrying all these challenges and striving um, to get the better of them, you know, not let it get the better of you type deal, kind of like a story of perseverance. I'm gonna vibe with Return of the Jedi more, and I, there's just, I don't know. Like I think for me, this is my favorite Star Wars film. I think Star Wars at the end of the day is a message about hope and a story about hearts, and that's exactly what this movie is. Not that Empire isn't that, but at the end of it, even though they just been through a rummage of crap, it's like, damn, we look out to the horizon. You know, they look out on the stars and they look on for better days, but here these are the better days. So I always love a good happy ending, and that's what this movie is. So for right now, I'm gonna have to say Return of the Jedi falls at the number one spot. How about you? Is it
Wow.
lower tier?
Well, it's definitely not number one. My top two are sort of always locked in Revenge of the Sith and The Force Awakens, which people can yell at me about if they want.
I
But
definitely will.
but it's always in that top six, because it could go anywhere from six
Sorry.
five, 6, 5, 4, or 3. Which in that next four I have Phantom Menace, Empire Strikes Back, A New Hope, and Return of the Jedi. Oh no, not A New Hope. Sorry, Rogue One. Sorry, I'm confusing myself.
You have Phantom
So
Menace above this film?
occasionally, yeah, the Phantom Menace is very special to me. I would say, but yeah, everyone just feel free to just start yelling at me right now. I'm all good with it. Nothing I've never heard before. Anyway, so it's in the top half. I would say almost always. But I mean, it's an ever changing thing. Like you say, I could watch the film and say, oh, it's in my top 3, and then watch Rogue One or something else and be like, oh, actually that. So it's always changing, but it's definitely on my top end. But to me, rankings are so like whatever when it comes to Star Wars for the most part, because I genuinely like The Rise of Skywalker, my least favorite Star Wars movie. I still love it. I'm gonna be completely honest. I still love that movie. I love all of them. So it could be last, it could be first. I love them all. So whatever. But if I had to rank it, it'd be in the top half, I would say. So yeah.
Sorry,
You look like you just want to start yelling.
No. It's just I remember on the podcast before you said they're in an argument. I think it was about during the Tales of the Jedi. You were like, and he loves Rise of Skywalker, and now to hear you say you love Rise of Skywalker too.
And what Rise of Skywalker?
You said you loved Rise of Skywalker, or no? That you told me. You told me you were like you were kind of saying as a derogatory. You were like, and he loves Rise of Skywalker, by the way. So to hear you say that, it's everything comes full circle.
Like genuinely, I love pretty much everything in Star Wars, probably outside of the Mandalorian season 3. So, anyway, we're not getting into that. We're celebrating Return of the Jedi right now. So Mike, before we sort of discuss like just the meat and the staples of the film, let's talk about like what it could be a theme, it could be a scene, it could be a character, whatever it is. What of Return of the Jedi you feel like lives with you every day?
I think the story of redemption, I think that's the biggest staple here. I think the story of redemption is something that I don't know, not that I'm a morally gray character, but sometimes it just feels like I'm away from that like good side, I don't know. And or even when I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. So I've always used this film as kind of like there's always that tomorrow that you can have, that moment that Vader has, that kind of just turns the other way and says, no, that's enough. Like I'm done with this type deal. Like we never got to see Vader really, or Anakin, correct his mistakes and all, but it was just in that like small moment that was in the film of Vader saving his son. I was like, if that can happen, I feel like anything is possible when it comes to correcting mistakes and kind of redeeming yourself in a way. So no matter the hurt you've caused or whatnot. So I feel like I feel like that for me, the story and lesson of redemption is one for me that I always carry. I'm just like, yeah, there's always that second option, that second opportunity to, kind of redeem yourself and move on. And it was such a big thing here in the film that like Avatar, The Last Airbender carried that on. The sequel trilogy carried that on, and so many different examples of redemption and characters turning, villain characters turning to the good side. So many different examples. But yeah, that's the one for me that I'm always carrying. And the other one is probably Luke taking a stand and being like, I'm a Jedi like my father before me. Like, how cold? Like, that man just got up on that platform and was like, no, even though I just slipped to the dark side right there, that's not what I am. I'm a Jedi, and like my father before me, who he just, points his head towards and says that in front of the Emperor and even throws on his weapon. It's sometimes I think Yoda said it best, or was it Kanan? Sometimes having the strength is better. So, I don't know, some quote in Rebels about sometimes it's not about fighting, and Luke lives up to that by just throwing down his lightsaber and being like, "No, I'm not fighting you. I'm not going to give into hate and all that you want me to give into. I'm set in stone. You're not going to move me." So I think that's also very powerful. So I think that story of redemption and that moment with Luke, I think I carry on with me every day. What about you?
Yeah, I definitely agree with both of those examples. To talk about maybe something a bit more funky, I guess. I don't know. I've always loved like the spunk of Return of the Jedi, whether that's with the Ewoks or in Jabba's palace. or with Nine Num co-piloting the Millennium Falcon. I made a post about it the other day, but I think Return of the Jedi has got to be, maybe outside of A New Hope because it created the whole universe. It's got to be one of the best examples of Star Wars, just the creative minds just going to work and having fun playing in the sandbox and creating all these ridiculous these ridiculous alien and creatures, which was just such a joy to watch as a kid. Actually, I'll ask you this, Mike. As a kid, you said you didn't like the in Empire chopping off the Wampa's arm, the torn guts. How in Return of the Jedi, did you feel similarly with all these crazy creatures, or did you have a positive response to it?
Sort of. I definitely felt it like I felt it dingy in Jabba's palace. I felt it creepy almost. Like there's a lot of slime everywhere with Jabba and all these weird creatures. I definitely felt kind of like Luke walking in there when he walks in there and everyone just kind of spreads out, but it's like surrounding him. That's how I felt. I just felt kind of trapped in there. So it was kind of like cool because it was like, like you had your Salacious Crumb, Max Rebo, but then you had some guy yelling on the microphone, singing and all that stuff. By the way, Lopty Neck is better than Jedi Rocks. I'll just say that. But yeah, Lopty Neck is in the original cut. Sorry, but not sorry.
Disagree. Well, anyway, interesting to hear, because I just was wondering, because for me as a kid, I was like, I felt a similar response to you with Empire, but then in Return of the Jedi, I loved all the creatures, I loved all that, getting to dive into that, and look, as someone who grew up with the special edition, because it was just simply what I watched. I didn't watch the original cut of the film till like a few years ago. I'm a Jedi Rocks man. I'm a victory celebration man. Like, I love all that stuff. All that music is very important to me, very special. I love it. It puts me in the seat of Return of the Jedi anytime I hear anything like that. And Sice Noodles running up to the camera with the weird lips.
Oh,
love that too,
man.
because I just I think it's so just it's just got so much spunk that is just hilarious to me. It's camp in the best way possible. So that's something that sticks out in a big way to me. I'd say just the ultimate triumph of the film. Like I said, it can give you a warm, fuzzy feeling. Just that the simple idea of, if a simple group of teddy bears can just unite and fight the Empire, it can be taken down. So even though that is a bit silly and a bit camp, I think Star Wars is just a bit silly and a bit camp always. So it's a fitting way to end the original trilogy. And I love that story of triumph. There's so many other things that I could talk about, but we're about to sort of go through all that. So, Mike, any other sort of staples in the film that you want to talk about that, I don't know, that it could be similar to last time, could be a theme, whatever, or just a sequence, a character? What other staples sort of stick out to you?
Oh man, I think it's probably Jabba's palace and just the opener there. There's just there's so much to talk about there, but there's something about the dialogue with Jabba and some of the bounty hunters, or even when you get Boosh up in there, which is Leia and Chewbacca. Like it's just I take a lot of that like alien exchange with the Huttese. I don't know, like it's such a, I'm not like I don't know what they're saying without the subtitles, but I'm just like that's so Star Wars, like that's so cool. And we got some of that stuff in modern day Star Wars with characters talking Huttese, but the way Jabba's voice echoes throughout Jabba's palace whenever he's speaking, I don't know, it's just very cool and threatening, but I don't know, like it's just I just love the aesthetic of the film. And Jabba's palace is one of those where like when I had the opportunity, I bought a Black Series Jabba figure and then I try to make it look like his throne room. Like it's just that's one of the things that whenever the Skywalker Lego game, I was excited to do Return of the Jedi, and especially Jabba's palace, because I'm just like, man, the Skywalker saga made it feel like just like this, or I'm sorry, the original Lego game, the saga game, made it feel like this endless big map, and even over the pit of Carcoon, I was just like, oh man, like this just feels like I don't know, like Return of the Jedi is Star Wars to me because it's like the first film that I watched, and I think the second one was Revenge of the Sith, but Return of the Jedi just set the stage for everything that I should expect in Star Wars, and exactly what you're saying, like even the Ewok stuff. I'm like, we forget about that these teddy bears overtook an empire, right? Um, or at least a major defeat in its they were the ones like providing the distraction while it was Luke who took down the Empire on top. He beat, the Emperor was killed, and then Vader was also killed. He's the one that cut the snake off by its head, while the Ewoks were over here distracting the snake. So I feel like I don't know. It's just, and we'll talk about this later, but I feel like this is such um a good conclusion is all I'll say for now. But I think it's a good conclusion.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing with the Ewoks is it sort of says like no matter what your skill set may be, no matter who you are, even if you're a teddy bear, everyone can be involved in a rebellion. And when you truly unify, it means everyone's got to do it, even the teddy bears. Everyone's got to be involved. So, no, shout out to the Ewoks. We absolutely love them. I think as well, another really powerful moment from the film would be the 10 or so minutes we get on Dagobah. Um, Yoda's final words to Luke are pretty beautiful, and then sort of the explanation of from Obi-Wan to Luke, which confirmed to audiences back then, yes, Darth Vader really is his father, because we've heard George Lucas and co talk about how the audience genuinely didn't believe it, so we needed Obi-Wan to come back and say, nope, that was legit, that's really happening. So yeah, I think Yoda's death is certainly one of the more I mean, some of the stuff at the end, but in terms of the first half of the film, definitely some of the very emotionally driven sort of stuff in the movie. How did you sort of, I guess watching it recently, how did it hold up then?
Held up really well. Like I said, I cried during it, just because it. I don't like it was just it was very heavy hitting. Not specifically just his death, but everything that he tells Luke. Your father, he is. There is another Skywalker. The last of the Jedi will you be? Like, goddamn. Like Luke just came for more training and he got slapped around 3 times with all this info. And all this other stuff too that you have to confront Vader. Only then and only then a Jedi will you be. So I mean, it's just very heavy hitting, and I feel like in my adult age, I can definitely attest to some of the challenges thrown your way, and you just having to deal with it. It's like, well, bud, this is it. You have to deal with reality, and that's Luke's reality. He has to confront his father, and you could just feel the anxiety just put on Luke there in that
Mm,
moment,
mm,
of, well, who the hell is this other Skywalker? Then I gotta confront my father. Um, I have to face him even though I don't want to. How can I kill my own father? I have to do it. Just all these challenges placed in front of Luke, where it's just like, yeah, it's like I am sad that Yoda dies. It's like, oh man, that's he passes on the torch now. But there's just all these events that are preceding Luke that are just he's gonna have to go through. It almost feels like like actually never mind. I'm not gonna mention religious stuff right now, but it feels very heavy. It feels like the eve of something greater, and not in a good way. Like the dawn before he has to go off and face something. Like it honestly it feels like in tune with the moment right when he departs with Leia, tells her, "I'm your brother." It feels like right before then when he says, "I have to go confront Vader." It just feels like, oh man, he's about to leave us and go with them. It just feels like this moment that Kanan and Hera have at the end of Rebel season 2, right before Kanan and Ezra and Ahsoka go off to, get info about the Inquisitors. It's just like, man, I don't know what's next. I don't know if I'm gonna be okay, but I have to go do
yeah.
this thing, and that's exactly what Luke is doing here. So, and then obviously his combo with Ben, but it's just very heavy hitting, and I just remember swelling up the theater with emotion, and then it came down in tears, and I'm not afraid to admit it. It was a good moment. It was a good cry, and yeah, the scene, and plus the music too. It's
Oh yeah.
very very hitting too. So, do you care about Yoda's death at all?
No, no, not really.
Uh,
Um, yeah, we'll no, absolutely. I can't add to what you said. I agree with everything there, and I think, I mean, like you just mentioned, it goes without saying, but John Williams is just uh, the, like the one thing that Star Wars fans can't disagree on is that he just crushes every movie he did. So, I think something else real quick. You said you could feel the anxiety off Luke. I completely agree with that, and that's a complete testament to Mark Hamill. I feel like, because the way the look on his face when he's saying he's revealing these massive revelations is yeah, fantastic. Also, something else I want to talk about that sort of adds to that warm feeling that I feel with this movie that I was talking about is I love the scene shortly after the whole rancor. What am I talking about? The Sarlacc pit, and the rebels are meeting. Mon Mothma's saying, yada yada yada, and our heroes are sort of reuniting. Luke comes into the room after being at Dagobah. Lando and Han sort of, oh, General, huh? Love all that. And then the way they're talking about the Falcon. I love that sort of. It's a nice moment of calm before the storm with our heroes sort of seeing like, yeah, like this is what it's going to be like when they can defeat the Empire, just friends hanging out or even family at that point. So yeah, I love that scene. And I mean, what better way to wrap up this film with the Battle of Endor, one of the most epic space battles fights in Star Wars, and then of course Luke and the Emperor all going in between that. How did you? What stands out to you about Act 3?
Act three is a complex uh way to tell the story, and you have all these, like, you have to cut these things like at the perfect moment, and I think this film is an example of how to do an act three, because it has so many things it's juggling stuff on each bridge, on the Empire's bridge, on the Mon Calamari cruiser's bridge, with Akbar, to the actual fighters fighting in the battles, Imperial and Rebels. Then you have the throne room stuff going on with Luke and Palpatine and Vader. And then you cut down to the forest below. You have things going on with Chewie and the Ewoks, and Han and Leia in the forefront. It's just, there's an array of things that make the film's third act feel so grand. And I think, and there's not even where I'm like, oh yeah, that's my favorite, because there's just so many good things happening on each side, and you even have Lando in the skies. And I think it's just perfectly cut between each moment, between conversations with Luke and Palpatine, to cutting back down, and this overwhelming fear that the rebels have, that the Han and team are not going to be able to pull this thing off. And Lando's like, just trust them. I trust them with my life, whatever. And it's Lando's conveying this message of trust and all, and faith. And he's rewarded when Han and company destroy the shield generator, and he's like, I knew they'd do it. It's a good feeling. So I love so many things about this third act. Second act is a little bit like, okay, let's get from point A to point B type storytelling, with them trying to locate the shield generator and all the Ewok fun. It's like, I feel like it's the down moment in the film, but it's still good. I still have a very good time with it. But this third act is just crazy. It's all the stuff that you would want in a finale. So I honestly couldn't even pick out a moment to you that is my favorite specifically, but there's just so many highlights of what I just mentioned that are so good. And even though it's like, let's destroy the Death Star again. It's just such a fun vibe when the X-wings are going in, like uh gold leader, red 5, red 4, follow me, and they all go in following Lando, and then they're like, dun, dun. This upbeat music that plays.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just such a vibe, this last chapter, or this last act. So yeah, what are some
Yeah.
of your favorite moments?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, just first of all to say, I agree with you because the movie is, especially Act 3, is so well paced. Yeah, like they're juggling a lot, and it's really perfectly executed. I think a few just highlights of getting toward the end of the film would be when they finally do destroy the Death Star, and the Falcon's flying out, and it's everything is exploding behind them. And as they come out, Lando lets out that big yo, and
Yeah.
then Nine Num's sitting next to him, and he kind of does his little chuckle. I remember me and my brother used to replay Nine Num's chuckle all the time because we thought it was the funniest thing
and
ever.
in Battlefront, and EA rewarded us because if you go play 2015's Battlefront, an emote was Nine Nuns chuckle, and I would play that so many times. So that absolutely agree.
Yeah, no, 100%. And then, I think just one of the most. This movie is very powerful just throughout, but one of the most powerful moments in the film, I would say, is Luke with Vader on the funeral pile, which was, I think everyone can unanimously agree that's just a fantastic scene. I remember as a kid, it was one of the first times that I was watching like a movie or a show, and I was like, oh my god, this is really like filling my heart with a lot of emotions. And I was like, I don't know how I feel about this, but obviously then sort of growing up watching it again and again, just thinking like, wow, this is really incredible. Certainly, makes me misty eyed each time I watch it because, yeah, once again, it's just the acting, the music, the visual. It hits on every level, which I think it is. You could say that about this movie as a whole. So and then moving from that, the transition into the celebration, I think it is really well done. Even though the tone really shifts all of a sudden into mourning the death of a really flawed person, but also someone that just kind of saved the galaxy, going into a celebration. Like it's sort of a weird transition, but it works really well, I'd say. So yeah, no, I like, and then as I said, it's called Victory Celebration, right? The
Right.
newer
Yes.
edition. Yeah, I'm definitely a Victory Celebration man. Yub Nub
Yes.
is fine. That's not for me though.
No, not even for me.
Yeah, even I would say I love. I have seen people complain about this, but I love that when George Lucas went back and did one of the special editions, after all the hate the Jar Jar got, he thought, I'm just going to put a Gungan in there yelling, "We are free." I hear it every time, and I just love it so much.
We
But
so
yeah,
free. Yeah, it's great.
exactly. The whole ending of the film is just beautiful, and then the final shot of we see all our Force ghosts. No disrespect to the people that enjoy the original movie, but I love seeing Hayden Christensen there. And then the final shot of the heroes, I think, is perfect. So really, the last like 5-10 minutes of this film, I could just watch on YouTube any day because it's marvelous. But Mike, what do you think? What do you have to add to that?
Yeah, no, the finale here is good. Yeah, I've when I went to go see the original, I think I was like a kid or something, or maybe in high school. But when I finally saw, no, I was a kid. When I saw the original cut of Return of the Jedi, like the ending, the Yub Nub, I was like, huh, interesting. And then Victory Celebration, I'm just like, that was my finale. Like that is such a like good capsule that even Rise of Skywalker tried to recreate, but they failed. And they failed trying to recapture that magic that the finale had. And I love the Hayden Christensen scene. At my theater, at my showing, people clapped. And I'm just like, yeah, like it just ties everything together. Like, and apparently Hayden Christensen didn't even know that George Lucas was gonna put him in there. He just had him doing some like kind of footage, and he's like, oh, I would have acted better because I didn't know what I was doing. I don't know what George was gonna use that for. I thought it was for Revenge of the Sith or whatever they were doing. So I think that's hilarious. So I think like that's just it's wait, when did Victory? Oh yeah, okay. Holy crap. Like there's just so many additions and special editions to this movie, like the re-release in 19 who knows when, and then the DVD versions, and yeah, there's just, and now even if you get I forgot which Blu-ray, I think it's the 2006 Blu-ray, when Vader throws Palpatine into the chasm, right beforehand he goes no, and he just lets out this like long no, like he did when he found out Padme was dead in Revenge of the Sith. Did you know this? Do you know this? Yeah. So I think it's funny back then. Speaking of 40 years, like 10 years ago, when I was just starting out in podcasting, I would read complaints and just for online discussion sake, just to do on the podcast, and people were so mad that no was added in, and I'm like, it's just so crazy compared to the actual issues in Star Wars now, or whatever, that, or
Yeah.
gripes that people have. I'm just like, looking back, I'm like, that is so small. How about something just
Yeah.
added in the film, and now just actual characters, character work that's being done. But yeah, this ending scene is really powerful, and it's funny that you bring up Luke mourning over the funeral pyre for his father, and then like, but it just does it so seamlessly. Like the camera pans up from Luke overlooking his dad to the sky of fireworks, and the music just transcends beautifully, and eventually, as you go across more planets, like, it just kicks the music kicks in, and now you're in a party mode. So it just does
Yeah.
it pretty seamlessly. But yeah, and it's pretty crazy how much the Star Wars books, whether Alphabet Squadron, Aftermath, Princess and the Scoundrel, have built upon these moments after uh victory celebration. Like, there's like, one of the pilots from Alphabet Squadron was actually watching Luke and Vader. Apparently, though, according to the book, like, he was walking his way to the party, and he's like, "Where is that fire coming from?" And then sees Luke mourning Vader, and he's like, "What is going on?" And then there's also that moment in Princess and the Scoundrel where Leia, a few days after the party, she's like, she goes up to the body or whatever, and she's like, "I hate you, you're not my father." And there's a great moment. Or even in Aftermath, there's some moments like the Coruscant crowd, sad but true, in canon, all those people were shot up, who were tearing down the Palpatine statue, like, moments after, as soon as the camera goes away. uh, as soon as we move on to the next planet, all those
Grim.
people are open fired on by a Coruscant speeder or something. So um I just it's a this film, the ending is very impactful, and I kind of like that. um well, actually, I asked you this: how did you feel that, when you heard, I don't even know how old you were, but when you heard that you're probably 10, I don't know, but when you heard that that there's going to be new Star Wars movies and stuff, and these were going to be continuations, so the Empire wasn't truly dead, that wasn't the happy ever after ending that everyone thought it was, but there was going to be a new story on the rise with Han, Luke, and Leia, with a new challenge to face. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I was maybe 8 or 9, and I was just completely excited by it. I didn't really think about it that way, to be honest, because I remember it was just my dad was reading me an article being like, "Oh, Ari, they're making new Star Wars," and he was just telling me all this information. Like, I remember one of the things he told me is like, and C-3PO and R2-D2 are going to be the only characters in all 9 movies, and I was like, "Oh, cool, cool, cool."
Mm.
Um, but no, I didn't really think about it like, oh, the happy ending is undone. I still see this as a happy ending, to be honest.
Yep.
I just think, time moves on, new threats emerge. Do I wish in the sequel trilogy the villains, so to speak, weren't practically Empire 2.0? Yeah, but I still think it's a triumphant victory to be celebrated here, and mostly a happy ending.
Yeah, I just feel like if anything, they've just reshaped the way we've looked at this victory. That it wasn't
Yeah,
an end all be all battle like we thought it was when we were kids. Because I mean, yeah, you toppled and it's logical, right? You did topple the Death Star too, and the leadership, but what happened after? And I mean, you read books like Heir to the Empire, and the Empire is still thriving 5 years after the Battle of Endor. So even back then, they continued that the Empire still lived. And now with canon, it's like, oh yeah, then the Battle of Jakku was the one that was the all end all be all battle that forced the Empire to not retreat, but forfeit, to give up. So yeah, and it's pretty cool finding that out, and I'm okay with that. I don't think it ruined the ending at all. This ending is so good that it stands on its own. Like, it doesn't need that, like, those underlines. Well, this is the battle of this. Like, the ending's so good. Their victory is well earned and accomplished, that it stands on its own, and it stands for the testament of time that 40 years later, even after all these additions to lore and the way they reshaped the way we looked at this battle, it's still great. And same with this victory celebration, like, it's still great. So I think to hit off the last note here that we have, do you think this was a good ending to the trilogy?
absolutely. Yeah, I don't think. they could have done it any better, in my opinion. I remember feeling like the trilogy just feels like it was so whole, if that makes any sense. Like it had a clear start and end, and the story ran. And no, George Lucas didn't really plan out every detail. He did make up little bits as he went along, but it works perfectly. And it's yeah, I'd say it's the most cohesive Star Wars trilogy that we
Yeah,
have.
definitely,
So
definitely.
yeah, it was a great ending to the trilogy. How about you?
I think this was what's funny is when I watched this, like all six films of Star Wars were out, so I always saw this as not as and the this ending is so good. Even I mean the Yub Nub one I have to rewatch, but that I don't know how people were satisfied by that at all. I guess maybe that ending shot was still there with all the heroes gathered around, but I'm like, I just love this because it just the original trilogy is a very focused story where it doesn't give you really the scale of the galaxy. It just gives you about the characters. You don't really get to see what other planets are doing. You're only fixated and focused on the main characters, and that's okay. That's good. But it doesn't really give you the state of the galaxy. So I feel like Return of the Jedi here in this Victory Celebration edition, it gave you a scope of the galaxy and everything that Luke, Han, and Leia were doing that affected everybody else. So I absolutely love that. But also, it really brought a conclusion to the trilogy, but as a saga as a whole. Like I always saw this as the definitive end to all the characters and stuff. I thought this was like the end game. Well, I can't even say that because Marvel has still putting out movies. But I saw this as the end game. Like I was just like, that's it. There's no more. Like, you know, and when I heard there's more Star Wars, I was like, oh, cool. I wonder how they're gonna do that though. But cool. I was always open. There's someone that I mentored on Instagram back in the day when I was just starting. They were very upset. He was very upset every day, complaining about this was the perfect ending. This was a good ending. Like, why is Disney doing this? And to go back to the conversation. I'm like, again, they just reshape. Like, I feel like by adding 7, 8, and 9, yeah, they reshaped our view of it. But it doesn't make it any less impactful. And that's exactly how I feel about this, about the saga. Like, yeah, is it closing chapter for episodes 1 through 6? Absolutely. But there's always more stories to tell and such. And I the Rise of Skywalker had the job of not only closing out the trilogy, which it couldn't even do that, but closing out the saga, and it couldn't even do that. So this is just with the addition of the special edition with the Victory Celebration, as you said, it just brings that whole. But for me, it brings that whole to through for the whole saga, because even the first planet shot we see, I'm pretty sure the second one is the Gungans,
Mm.
and then even the Coruscant, you see the Jedi Temple in the back. Well, the palace, Imperial Palace. Like it just brings everything together, all those visuals and the Gungans being like, you know, we so free. Like it makes, I don't know, it just unifies everything. So yeah, I think this is not only a good ending to the trilogy, but a good ending to the original Star Wars saga as a whole.
Yeah, and a good ending to the podcast. That, that does wrap up our celebration of 40 years of Return of the Jedi. Yeah, of course, if you're listening to this podcast and you've listened all the way through, we'd love to hear your thoughts on what Return of the Jedi means to you. That's a great opportunity to talk about our experiences with this movie. So if you're listening and you have an experience you want to share, we'd love to hear it. Also, Mike, tell the people about the collab once again on Instagram and what's coming up.
Yeah, it's funny you were talking about unification earlier, about people unifying to fight the Empire, and no matter
Mm.
your background, and that's literally what it is for the Instagram sphere. Like, we have a friend who doesn't really do Instagram stuff, but is out there posting, and
Yeah.
everyone is kind of dwelling into stuff they normally wouldn't do. So it just feels like a unified effort. So definitely go check that out. There's tons of things going out today, just on Instagram. So go check out me or Ari's page, and you'll find your way through everybody's stuff. But it's
Yeah.
just great. So make sure to tune in for that. And I was gonna mention another thing about it. Maybe that's it. Oh yeah, yeah. So we didn't get to talk about everything here about Ian McDermott's performance as the Emperor and all that stuff, but
Yeah,
everyone on Instagram is covering like all the nooks and cranny of the film. So
yeah,
definitely go check out the party continues. The party is not over. Go check out the Instagram squad, and you'll see everybody posting about various things of Return of the Jedi, and we're even going to touch a bit about some lore post Return of the Jedi, kind of some of the things I just mentioned. So go check that out for real. Don't miss out.
yeah. Still a lot to come. We're wrapping up in about a week. Is that right?
Yes, and
Yeah.
yeah. Which speaking of, next week will be our last podcast for a minute.
It will. We'll talk more about that next week. It's coming out in June, and the next podcast will still be out in June. But for those that have been paying attention, so there's some very, very special stuff coming on the horizon. So yeah, next week, catch that update. But yeah, once again, we thanks to everyone for watching. You can follow the podcast at the SW Exchange. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube. Like the video, drop a 5-star rating if you enjoy listening to the podcast. We really appreciate all that. Follow Mike at all_Star Wars and me at Star Wars_Exchange. Thank you all for listening. As always, may the force be with you. See you next week.
Adios.